The wizards. Markul and 20 other wizards had made it to Ralgaban. Sadly, this was only half the number required to help transform the third sphere. Vasu, the avatar of the third sphere, was currently with them, and his responsibility was to protect them while they attended an academy. It was also his job to make sure they were well equipped to fight the Dark One's Spectre army. This was the primary objective of the up-and-coming academy. The 10 sages would also attend this academy to be their teachers. The sages reside in the 10 pillars of Dharma, which is inside the in-between. The Dark One was the Spectre god, and he would do anything to destroy what was happening at Ralgaban. That is why Vasu was adamant that all the remaining oracles coming to Ralgaban had to make it through all the preliminary tests to arrive there safely. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been up to the task. He required wizards of great caliber. So, the 21 wizards arriving at the academy were aware that they had achieved a high level of progress to make it here. However, they also knew it was the beginning of an even more difficult series of tests. Markul knew this more than anyone. After all, he came from a basic lifestyle to this unbelievably fantastic adventure. He almost had to pinch himself when he looked around at the high arched ceilings and pillars of the temple. He smiled as he watched other wizards looking around with the same mixture of awe and apprehension. It wasn't very long ago that he was a simple farm boy on a moon called Yesflon, a moon that so happened to orbit this world called Ralgaban. He strolled through to an adjoining area, which was the common area food dispensary. Further on, there were rows of small sleeping units. Although it was so big inside, from the outside, it still looked like it was just the size of the original temple. Vasu explained it as living in what he called the foundation, which was basically a subtle underlying dimension. Markul was 17, with medium build and short brown hair. He wore ragged clothing that looked like it came out of 19th century England. He had a kind, gentle nature but was strong and brave when required. His powers were awakened by his elder, Neldan, who came from a world called Pern, a world about halfway between Ralgaban and Earth. His powers came from universal powers that were channeled from various deities in that universe. "Seen Vasu?" asked Markul, looking around the common area. "No," said Ishtar. Ishtar was 16, with a small build and long blonde hair. She came from a world called Sabian. She had a very reserved nature and tended to be very caring to others. Although she looked very delicate, her main qualities through her powers were dynamism and stealth. Her enemies tended not to discover her until the last minute. "There he is," said Nymir, suddenly spotting the avatar out in the field. "He must have just transferred there, as he wasn't there a moment ago. What's he doing?" Nymir was 18, with long dark braided hair and a small but athletic build. She had a slightly masculine look, without taking away too much of her femininity. She was strong and wise, and wore sophisticated armor cladding that gave her the appearance of a warrior princess. In fact, her battle dress was computer-controlled, and could be manipulated to suit whatever battle she was in. She came from a world called Adaron, and her elder was Daniel Withers. "Maybe he's out getting some fresh air," said Aaron with a grin. Aaron was 17, tall with a muscular build and blonde hair. He had a determined, reserved personality, and was always up for a challenge. He came from a world called Seron, and his elder was Landos. Landos was slain by a spectre on Seron, before he crossed the juncture to Ralgaban. "There must be something going on up in the sky," said Josel. "Let's go out and see." Josel was 17, with a small build and black hair. He had a witty character, and tended to think through situations very quickly. He used an evasive fighting style in combat, combined with his ability to move with incredible speed. He came from a world called Kaliv, and his elder was Kalana. "Something's getting through," said Jarsin. Jarsin was 18, of small build with long sandy hair. She had a strong, driven, and compassionate nature. While she was small, She never let anyone walk all over her, and was fearless in conflict. She came from a world called Alanshire, and her elder was Vardus. Vardus, like Aaron's elder, was slain by a spectre before she crossed over to Ralgaban. They all raced outside, looked up in the sky, and immediately spotted a dark anti-clockwise swirling vortex causing the blue sky around it to cloud up very quickly. "I can't believe it," snapped Markul. "The Spectres have found a way to get through." At that moment, a large black griffin appeared in the sky, sizzling from the vibrations as it entered. It had a body, tail, and back legs of a lion, and the head and wings of an eagle. It ignored the avatar and turned its black, red-eyed head toward the wizards, fiery powers sparking around its beak. Before the wizards could prepare their powers for the attack, Vasu flew over in front of the group and pulled out his staff. The powers from the staff hit the griffin hard on its abdomen before it had time to unleash its own powers. The griffin screeched and immediately came crashing to the ground. The wizards walked over to the griffin and inspected it, as more griffins entered the atmosphere. Vasu held up his hand, implying that he'll take care of the other beasts. "Wait there," he ordered. Vasu flew toward the other griffins, and started knocking them down with his powers one by one. "What is the point of these monsters breaking through our defenses, only to be brought down so easily?" said Nymir, looking closely at a fallen beast. She struck a vibrated sword through the side of the griffin's belly. "What did you do that for?" snapped Aaron. Vasu said to wait here, not play bird mortician. "I think they're a manifestation of the sorcerers the Spectres have been exhuming across worlds," said Nymir, ignoring Aaron and looking at Markul. "They're testing our defenses," said Markul, "to see how protected we really are." "It's a fear tactic," said Ishtar. "They're just letting us know they can break through our defenses." "A tactic that won't work," said Jarsin. "We don't fear them." Markul watched as Aaron bent down to look inside its belly. "And you cut this beast open because?" asked Aaron, looking at Nymir. "I was checking its defenses." "How do you mean?" asked Aaron, baffled. "The last sorcerer I fought on Nelos in the form of a dragon had hardened skin on its wings, and used them as a shield when I fought it." "Like a shield against the vibrations," said Markul. "Yes," said Nymir. "Look at the thickness of its skin just around its belly." The skin was thick, considering its mass. Markul hadn't really thought of studying his enemy like the military would, but it was a good thing that Nymir did. "That's something I'd never thought of." "Well, you wouldn't when you've already brought down the most powerful of our enemies," replied Nymir. Vasu landed back in front of them. "The Dark One is building a more powerful army of spectres." He glared at them sternly. "But what we're building here will be far more powerful than they are." Vasu appointed 7 masters out of the 21 wizards who had so far made it to Ralgaban. They were Markul, Nymir, Josel, Aaron, Ishtar, Jarsin, and David. David was discovered by Aaron, and although Aaron had tried to protect him, it was David in the end that saved Aaron from near death by vanquishing the Spectre. Aaron tried to imply the story was the other way around, but because everyone had the oracle powers within, they all knew the absolute truth. "Dave, you fought well," Aaron said, "but back on Seron, my home world, I was the top student in my class in a fighting style called Lenitso." "Oh really?" said Josel. "On Kaliv, I was the class clown." He made a funny face that Aaron couldn't see, and David started chuckling. "Martial arts classes do help," said Nymir, grinning at David, who was having trouble disguising his chuckling. "On Aderon, I was in training from 9 years old. We had to. The war on my world had been going for almost 100 years." Aaron went from looking unimpressed at David to Nymir. "I had little training," said Markul. "I was just a simple farm boy on Yesflon. Nelden appeared one day, and suddenly the fighting skills came to me." Aaron glared at Markul, but Markul was looking at David. "David, how did you bring down that spectre?" asked Markul, but before David could open his mouth, Aaron cut in. "I'll tell you," started Aaron. "No, let David speak, Aaron," said Markul gently. Everyone was aware that David didn't speak much. There was a moment of silence before Aaron snapped, "I'm going to my room to scribble down some notes," and walked off quickly. "Well, what's up his nose?" said Ishtar. "Perhaps something is bothering him," said Markul, thinking he was suddenly acting strange. "You talk to him, Markul," said Nymir. "You're good at reassuring people." "Later. Let him cool down a bit," said Markul. He looked at Nymir. "Am I?" "I'll talk to him," said David. "I'm the one who upset him." David was 20, with a medium build, very short brown hair and a quiet personality. He was very wise, and tended to listen carefully before presenting his views. Because of his subtle nature, the powers of the universe worked very effectively through him, and he is able to manifest them when required very powerfully. He came from a world called Yelia, and his elder was Oxlius. "There's no need to," said Jarsin. "He shouldn't be behaving this way." "There's no place for showing off or jealousy here," said Josel. "He needs to pull himself together and learn to work with everyone." Markul grinned. "I think we can work with his personality anyway. Just ignore his funny behavior, but make sure he's always included in our discussions." He paused. "Anyway, David, how did you kill that Spectre?" "I formed into white light," said David. "Transfiguration," said Josel, impressed. "Same as Markul had. Aaron didn't mention that at all." "He wouldn't, would he?" said Jarsin. "Did you take the shape of a sword?" asked Markul. "No, I was just white light," said David. "Better than Markul," said Josel. "Are you sure you're not a David from the ancient texts?" Everyone laughed. "Where did you come from, David?" asked Jarsin. "Yelia," said David. "I was also a simple farm boy on my planet, but we did have some technology there, unlike your world." He looked at Markul. "Did you use horses to do your work?" said Markul. He used the word horses, as it seemed more of a familiar word when translated through their oracle powers. They were called Vernefs on his world. "No, Yelia was a fully automated world," said David. "Machines were used for everything. They even cooked our meals." Markul thought Alanshire was advanced. Yelia sounded unbelievable. "So you had these holograms?" asked Markul, as he invoked an e-parchment from the table he was sitting on. He grabbed his electronic quill from his coat and signed his name in the air. "Yes, but our holograms were sophisticated," said David. "We even had holograms that were sentient." "You mean they lived like people?" asked Nymir, fascinated. "I've seen that on Antigua, but the technology didn't belong there. It was from a world called Earth," said Markul. There was silence for a while. Then Jarsin spoke. "That's not from the second sphere." She had checked her inner oracle senses. "No, it's from the first sphere," said Markul. "That world was a foundation world. It may have started in or was part of the First Order." "We only have worlds here from the second sphere," stated Ishtar, looking around at the other wizards chatting on the other tables, "but soon we'll have people from here in the third sphere." "Having only just crossed the bridge to the third sphere," added Josel. "I think that's where things went bad last time," said Markul, looking around at those on their table. "When the order of the first sphere crossed into the second sphere, something terrible happened.